You're on.
Willard and his bowling trophies. That's another good one.
Good morning. We want to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order for Monday, March 19th. Can we honor America by standing and reciting the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is election of officers. Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we make Bill Markson chairman.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. I'll be
Thank
glad
you.
to pass the baton to you.
Thank you.
Before I do, gentlemen, thank you for your help last year. A chairman can't be a chairman alone. So thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Do you have a vice chairman?
We don't have a vice chairman.
We don't have any vice?
We're viceless.
Our next order of business is a public hearing for cemetery abandonment for RSA 289:20. There are additional copies of the notice in the corner of the table here. Anybody that doesn't have one that might want one? And I will read the notice. I will, in abbreviated form, mentioning each of the cemeteries, but not all of the ancillary information about them. For the purposes of declaring certain cemeteries abandoned and declaring such abandoned cemeteries to be a municipal cemetery, and for preservation and/or restoration and maintenance pursuant to procedures of New Hampshire RSA 289:20, the town of Tuftonboro intends to declare abandoned the following cemeteries: Bean on Tibbetts Road, Briar Libby, Burley, Bradbury Burley, Canny, Nathaniel Caverly, Tristram Copp, William Copp, Dame, Fields, Edward Grant, John H. Graves, Haley, Ham, Horn Jenkins, Jones, Leathers Lefebvre, McKinney Glidden, Morrill Samuel, Mount Pleasant Haley Walker, Neal Nathaniel, Benjamin Pierce, Piper, Andrew K. Roberts, Runnels McDuffie, Captain Alicia Smith, Stevens, Thomas, Moses Thompson, Welch, Whitehouse, Whitney Glidden, and Woodworth Doe. That's 34 cemeteries and burial grounds. Any direct descendant of any person buried in one of these burial grounds is requested to contact the Tuftonboro Selectmen. This notice shall be read at a regularly scheduled Selectmen's meeting on March 19th. If any descendants were located and grant permission, or if no descendants were located, then in accordance with New Hampshire laws, after a public hearing, the town of Tuftonboro, by a majority vote of the selectmen present and voting, may declare these burial grounds abandoned. The vote declaring them abandoned makes the town cemetery trustees responsible for the care and maintenance of these cemeteries. Okay, public hearing is open. Sue, as chairman of the cemetery trustees, do you want to speak to?
Sure. This is not intended to be controversial, but sometimes it is because of the language, as we've talked about, that word abandoned is it's what's in the state law and the word we have to use. Doesn't mean that the heirs have actually abandoned them. But it means that we want to be authorized to have legal access to them and to take care of them as we have been doing. We want to make what we've always been doing legal. And to do that, you have to go through the abandonment process according to the information we get from the state. We already had this process for, I don't know, 8 or 10 cemeteries that we have perpetual care funds for. Those are the ones we started with, and the ones that we were doing more than once a year maintenance on, with the first batch that we declared abandoned. These are the next batch that we're doing a minimum of one cleanup a year on. They're ones that we don't have descendants who are active that we know of. And descendants still all have the right to access these cemeteries. Technically, the town doesn't have the right to access them unless they're either declared abandoned or we get that permission from the surrounding landowner. So this takes care of that. It does give us the right, it would give us the right to access them as well as take care of them. It also gives us a responsibility to take care of them, which, you know, the people in Tuftonboro care about their cemeteries, and they've been paying to have them cared for 50 years at least, I think.
Well, 1938 was when they started
Right, so
cleaning up the old cemetery.
that's 80 years of maintenance. You had a letter from one descendant of the Canny Cemetery, and I forget the other one. She was descendant from two different
We
cemeteries.
did. We received one piece of correspondence from one descendant. This is this lady's name is Martha Porter, lives out of state, and she indicated that she's a descendant of the Welch and Canny graveyards. And she had contacted us. We had a little bit of back and forth with her about the process, and I have a permission of descendant form here from her with respect to the abandonment. She was, I'll read a little bit out of the letter. I initially responded because the selectmen put an ad in the Granite State News for descendants to respond. I do appreciate that Tuftonboro cherishes their historic graveyards and wants to preserve and maintain them, and I feel they are doing a wonderful job. My permission is granted with the hopes that the future townspeople will also always continue to recognize these cemeteries as important and beautiful historic places that deserve to be preserved. So she had responded to the ad, and in subsequent correspondence has sent us a form with permission with her permission for the abandonment.
And I had a phone call over the weekend from someone who saw the article in the Granite State News, who was a descendant of the William Cox Cemetery, which is up off Old Town Road. And he just was excited because he wanted to know where it was. He never knew where it was and wanted to go see it. So that's basically the gist of it. We have money in our budget to repair old stones or damaged stones. And we've used that out here at the Townhouse Cemetery. We've used it at Edgerly Blake, and we also use it at Welch. And then we realized that we shouldn't We shouldn't have done that because that was a private cemetery without perpetual care, but we did. But we would like to be able to take care of the old stones and do maybe a little more work. Like with the canny is one that I know where it's a really early one, and the stones are tipping and going every which way, and there's a big pine tree that probably shouldn't be there. And we really would like the legal authority to take care of those things.
Any other public comment?
But abandoned, I feel, is the wrong word to be using here. And all of these cemeteries are on private property, and they've never been taken out of the perimeter of the property. The owners are paying taxes on these cemeteries. And some of these cemeteries, there are quite a few people that are, like the Welch, Nat Neal Cemetery, people have been using them to put urns in. And I don't feel that they're abandoned. People are still, I started mowing cemeteries in 1947, I think, when I was still in high school. Preston Piper and I rode around on my old mud buggy 3 years, and when we were getting $3 a day for doing it.
Top
And
dollar.
I've done it since 1988. And you go to these cemeteries, and some of them there'll be an open book laid on a grave, flowers in some of these old cemeteries. And I don't feel they're abandoned, like the Welch Cemetery, Craig's, Welch's. Kenny Craig's grandmother was a Welch. Della McIntyre's mother was a Welch. And the Thomas cemeteries on the neck, they're still Thomas. They're getting old like I am, but they're still people that are coming to these cemeteries, and I don't feel they should be abandoned. When they started doing this in 1938, it was just to preserve them. It wasn't to have a putting green in them. And I think doing what we've been doing is the right thing to do. But I don't, this LaFave Cemetery is actually on Brown property. When it was found, Bob Straw was the caretaker at LaFave's, and he found it hunting, and that's how it got called LaFave Cemetery, but it's actually on Brown property.
But the cemeteries are owned by the descendants of the people who are buried there. They're not owned by who owns the surrounding land.
Right.
So,
Correct.
so hopefully, in terms of taxable valuation on a property, that burial ground it is not part of
It's not a feature, I guess.
the value and should not be reflected in the assessed
When did that-
valuation.
When did that happen?
When did what happen?
That it became not a feature?
Never should have been, because it's not,
No, it always was. It must have changed at some point.
a cemetery was a
Because-
feature?
Yeah, because the piece of property that we own on Ledge Hill Road actually encompasses that cemetery, Ham Hill Cemetery, Ham Cemetery. And I think the thinking was, it was originally Bickford's that lived in the yellow house where my daughter lives, that it was connected somehow to that Bickford farm, and the Bickford's buried there. And that, same with the Thompsons, I guess, any number of places that it would be their family cemetery.
Right.
So
So if the Thompsons had sold that homestead, they would still own that cemetery. Cemetery wouldn't go with the sale of the homestead. It
So it
belongs
was
to the
abandoned
descendant.
at the moment of sale?
No, abandonment is the term the state legislature came up for this process of giving the town the legal right to take care of them and obligation.
Right.
The descendants didn't necessarily abandon them in any of these cases. That's why I said at the beginning that it's an unfortunate word, but it's the word we have to use by law. So, and the cemetery trustees have no desire for lawns, unless there's a lawn there, right? I think that some of the most beautiful cemeteries are the ones that are in the woods, that are like the one up at Camp Sentinel, between Sentinel and Mara Vista, where there's all kinds of handmade wreaths and things that are on the gravestones, and clearly somebody's there appreciating the serenity of the place. So if there's cemeteries that the surrounding landowner is taken care of, and they want to continue, that's fine, It's not like we're looking for more work, we just want to make sure they're preserved.
The landowners have actually cut trees, logged out of these cemeteries. They haven't, they own them. You've got a warranty deed of a piece of land. You've got a ash tree that's worth $1,000. They aren't gonna let it fall down if they can get some money out of it, and it's been done.
I don't know, can we still do that?
Like this townhouse cemetery, there's a deeded right-of-way right through the front yard of Spiderweb Gardens into the old Haley Cemetery, which was part of the Haley. And John Piper put his land into this townhouse cemetery. He sold you the deed, deeded you the lot, and dug the grave. I mean, that was part of the deal. That's how he got his living. And why this side towards the Piper House, the office here, is the way it is today. Nellie didn't want him to come any closer to the house, so he made the line of the old cemetery that's wider at the back, so we could still keep selling lots and digging graves.
If there are open lots in these graveyards, who controls those at this point?
I think the way the law reads, that after it's declared abandoned, the town would be the manager, but the town can't take away any rights any descendants have to be buried there. They have
You
to work
haven't
with...
done any, and pick a cemetery, I mean, I think they went up on Mount Pleasant, you have many descendants of the Haley's. And
There is one, and we've been up there,
We've been up there,
haven't we?
and I'm still waiting
went
for
up
the
to the-
pictures.
Huh? I have them. Yeah. I'll put them on a memory stick.
so let's just, and I have no idea if any of this is accurate, but let's assume there are 2 open lots there. And I happen to own that property. Can I decide I want to be buried there?
If you're not a descendant, you would negotiate with the town, the cemetery
that's-
trustees.
so
That
I-
would give us the authority to make that,
So the cemetery trustees now have taken over that role.
yes.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
But the descendants come first.
But you,
Right, yeah, no, I appreciate
and
that.
you share that role then with the descendants.
Yes, yes.
But those areas where there might be somebody who bought a house 100 years ago and are not technically a descendant, but they want to have their grandfather
Right,
buried there, they
right.
can come to you and petition to have that
I
lot
think,
open.
I think as it stands right now, it would be really difficult to get that. I mean, if this passes,
Mhm.
it would be really difficult to get that permission, because you can't tell today really
What's underneath?
what's underneath. And you know, I certainly wouldn't vote to give permission unless I knew that that space was available and no descendant was gonna claim it.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns, statements? You want to speak?
No, I'm just taking this over, thank you.
Okay, all right.
I'm not sure there was an answer to the question. So if you're managing it, someone's not a descendant and they want a lot, and you do feel that that's clear, you know, no one's underneath. The question was, does the town get money for selling that lot? Like you sell a
The
lot.
town would have the authority to sell that lot at that point.
That brings up a whole nother question.
The money from that sale goes into a cemetery fund that can only be used on work on cemeteries.
And is that the same as for the cemetery? Do those fees that are
Yes,
garnered from sale of lots, it goes to work on
yes,
cemeteries?
yes.
So it's kind of a policy that it would apply to.
But I think, I don't think the cemetery trustees are gonna have the authority to sell a lot, let's say at the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. If I own that property upon which the cemetery sits,
I think we would.
I don't think
That's
you
what I'm
would.
hearing.
Because I don't think you own that property. I don't think you actually own the cemetery.
Well, it's in the deed, so I don't know. I guess it's a question we need to ask. But I would think that if there was no direct connection to that property, and some citizen from away wanted a cemetery with a view,
It would be very difficult.
then the cemetery trustees could sell a plot to that person. I think it would be difficult to sell it to the current owner of the property, but we can figure that out.
Oh, you mean receive money for it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying.
Trust me, we have no plans to sell any lots of any of the old cemeteries.
But I don't think it's a
We're not-
matter of the authority to grant the right of burial. It's just the ownership. of this, right.
Our assessor is here today. I don't know if you'd like to ask them.
I think it's just getting more confusing if we got him in here. Just so.
About the ownership thought thing.
Okay, any other
I'll make a motion that we. do
public?
we need to move this, don't we?
Yep, any other public input? Okay, I declare the public hearing closed. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the cemetery's trustees' abandonment of the listed cemeteries.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion among the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 3-0. And so we declare these 34 cemeteries and burial grounds abandoned in accordance with RSA 289:20. Thank you, folks.
Thank you for your work.
All right.
Thank you, young fella.
Next, we have public input. Any public input?
Didn't have enough?
Yes, didn't have enough. Two things left over from town meeting. First one is, you know, the first article on the library where I proposed a motion to not authorize the selectmen to expend the money, to be agents to expend. I still believe what I said was correct, that once we allow you to be the agents, you get to go ahead and spend it without any further input from the townspeople. And you spoke, you know, in opposition, saying that, oh, the selectmen at some point have to be named agents. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think the selectmen ever need to be appointed agents. I think they can be, and once they are, they get to spend it. Or, in the alternative, we vote to spend the money, and then you don't need an agent because the selectmen automatically become the agents. So I wish you would check on that. see if that affects the outcome of that vote.
Meaning,
Because you gave out,
your feeling is that if the town people decided to spend the money on the library, that would be a separate vote from the establishment of the,
no, I feel like what we voted the other night gave you guys the right to go ahead and spend that money.
yeah, it did.
And that's not the way it was presented by you guys to the people.
Yes, it was. What I explained, and perhaps it didn't fly over their head too far, was that it doesn't eliminate the necessity of us petitioning the trustee of the trust funds, for instance, and the treasurer. We submit a bill that we're gonna spend some money out of that reserve fund. It now has to comport with the other language in the warrant article, which is for the construction of a new or renovated library. So the issue that I was hearing on the floor the other night was, well, you guys can spend on anything you want. Well, we can't spend on anything we want. We can only spend it on a renovation or,
You can spend it on anything you want on the library.
right. Right.
And I don't think that was how it was explained to the public by you. So maybe just watch that part of the tape, see
Okay.
if I'm imagining it or if it should be.
No, but I think, I gotta be honest with you, I think that there's benefit to that language beyond what was argued on the floor. In that, I really think the library trustees need to revisit their design. And if it's gonna take another 20 grand to come up with a design that's $1 million, then I'll spend the 20 grand tomorrow. And I think I convinced my fellow selectmen to spend the 20 grand. But if we don't have anything, we can't go anywhere.
Well, you have you have their fund. They have their fund they can spend anytime, any way they want.
Yeah. But it may come to a point where we decide we'd like to have some more information about something different. Because,
Yeah, but I don't think that,
I don't think.
I don't know that the public understood that in the conversation.
And I don't think, and I suppose it'll take another 20 years to get over it, but I think at some point in time, the citizens have to say, okay, the board of selectmen are not gonna piss away money. And, well, you can think it all you want, but the point I'm gonna make is that probably not a cent of that money is gonna get spent. Now, at that point, next year's meeting, are you or Max gonna stand up and say, thank you for not spending the money? No, it's gonna be forgotten that the implication from last Tuesday's meeting, or last Wednesday's meeting, was that we were gonna be profligate with those funds. And we're not. And I would
It's
be,
not that,
I would be
it's-
appreciative if, at the point at which we were found not to be profligate, we're
It isn't that at all. It's that I felt like the townspeople should have the vote to spend it, rather than just dumping it on the selectmen and not understanding. And I'm questioning whether they understand what happened, what they voted for. That's the question.
And
It's not, I'm not,
And I understood
Well-
that argument when you were making it on the floor the other night.
I guess I'd observe that, in general, I believe capital reserve funds, when they're established, are established with selectmen as agents to expend.
that's the new way, the new recent
And-
way.
Yeah.
And I believe that most of the voters understand that it doesn't mean in a particular situation that this huge amount of money is going to be taken and spent by the governing body without any input from the legislative body, but it does provide an avenue if, for instance, some design work needs to be done, to do it in the interim between town meetings.
A more dangerous place to go would be if you didn't have a board of selectmen who wouldn't do what I think the expectation is on some people's part, that we're gonna take the $900,000 that's in hand and get so far along on the project before next town meeting that you gotta vote.
It's very possible.
It isn't possible at all. I mean, it's absolutely possible with the language, but,
And I don't think
It's not
people
gonna get-
understand that.
okay, it's not gonna get driven in that direction, but appreciate your
May I
input.
ask a question? Is this public comment or?
Susie's still
We're
got
in the
floor.
public comment, yep.
Okay. So if the townspeople had to have a vote, any decision would have to wait a year?
Yeah. If there wasn't that language, anything that was gonna happen would have to wait until next time, or whenever they decided to spend the money.
Or use their funds.
Or use the library funds, right, as Susie said.
So, okay.
Okay, I have another suggestion.
You still got the floor.
You have another issue, okay?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Are we gonna put the fire truck out to bid?
Yes.
I think it did go, actually.
We have, and I was gonna discuss that in my update.
Okay.
But as far as fire truck wise, the $580,000 is a maximum, not to go over. We already have two, the committee that has been working on the truck already had two quotes.
These are firemen that are on the committee?
Yes, already had two quotes as far as trucks wise. And one came in at 580, one came in at 665. And I don't feel that the prices are gonna go down because the prices of the chassis and stuff, due to emissions, have all gone up in a percentage. But in a particular case, these were not bids, you know. We need to put out a spec to the manufacturers that build the fire trucks, that they're bidding on the same, like the same chassis or something that is similar to that. If they can't provide the particular chassis that we might be looking for, or the pump, or, you know, the engine and things like that. Because if you have one person that is, you know, they're gonna put a 500 horsepower engine in it versus a 525 horsepower engine, there's many thousands of dollars difference in that. So we need to make sure it's fair for everyone that's bidding on the truck. But no, we're not going against getting three bids, at least three bids for that particular apparatus.
I think kind of tangentially to that, I'm gonna propose that next year when we do the town report, we include a copy of the CIP. I mean, I think part of the issue that was at hand the other night was, all right, we're gonna get a fire truck this year, but it's, you know, hide the ball time for 2019, 20, 21. And I think if people knew what the process forward was, they might feel more comfortable as to how we're budgeting, and maybe we could be a little more forthcoming.
And that's something that, you know, as far as, when I was asked the question, is there anything else coming down the line?